Hi guys, it's been a long time since I've made a video. Today I wanted to show you I'm making my sourdough bread, and I'm gonna turn both of my sourdough loaves into cinnamon raisin sourdough. You can't tell it's sour at all. And my kids love it for breakfast, so we're gonna show you that. So last night I took out my sourdough base, my starter, and I took out a cup of my sourdough starter. I place it in a glass bowl. I only use plastic or glass utensils with the sourdough starter, okay? I put a cup in here and I added, sorry, I have to look. I added 2.5 cups of white flour and 2 cups of warm water. I used a plastic stirring device, stirred it really well, left it sit overnight for 8 to 12 hours. It's covered with plastic. It got really bubbly. This morning I took my measuring cup, I stirred it well. I took 1 cup of this out, 1 cup out, and I placed it back in my jar and stirred it up and put it back in the fridge. So that's kind of the process before you ever make anything. You've always got to return, it feeds your sourdough. So now I've got several cups of starter left, and I use this to make 2.5 to 3 loaves of bread. So this is an all-day process. I'm only going to show you this first step, and maybe I'll make another video of the other steps. I've got a couple things I'm planning today. Okay, so I always have to look at my recipe because I haven't been making this every single day. I make it once or twice, once a month at most. So I'm going to take off my plastic and save it because I'm going to be covering this later. And I throw in these items. I've warmed the milk with a minute in the microwave. So I'm adding a 1.5 cups milk, 2 tablespoons of melted butter. I've melted that as well. 2 teaspoons of salt. I actually add a tablespoon of salt because I'm getting 3 loaves of bread out of this, and I like a tablespoon of salt. I've been using this recipe for many years, and this is my favorite amount of salt. So 1 tablespoon of salt for 3 loaves of bread. And then 2 tablespoons of sugar. There's no yeast in this. The yeast comes from the sourdough. It's a natural occurring yeast, and it's been bubbling all night. So if your sourdough, if you wake up in the morning and it's not bubbling and it's not full of bubbles, then something's wrong with your sourdough starter and you need to not do this process. You'll have to look online and figure that out. Okay. So I add all of that stuff in and 1 cup of the flour. It's going to use more flour, but you only start out with 1 cup. So then we're going to slowly stir this and try to incorporate all of those different things and get it nice and liquidy. After you've returned your ingredient, your starter, to the big starter jar, you can start to use metal utensils. It's just that you don't want to use anything metal when you're going to replace that into the jar. The metal changes the composition of the sourdough, and I don't understand all of the scientific reasonings, but I've done a lot of research, and I don't want to ruin my starter by getting metal into the general base starter. There's a chemical reaction somehow. Okay, so I've got almost all the lumps out with that 1 cup of flour. Let's see if I can show you. Sorry, this isn't as exciting. There we go. I can't stir it at the same time, so you're gonna have to be patient. Okay, here we go. So the next step is going to be to stir in additional flour until the dough is too stiff to turn with a spoon. Okay. And it says approximately 4 more cups. So I'm just going to do like 2 cups and stir it, and then 2 more cups. It's not like totally like extremely important that it's exact. You're going to want the dough to be stiff so that you can knead it and not runny and gooey. So you just kind of have to look at the look of it. So you can kind of see it's getting thicker. That was 2 additional cups. So I've put a total of 3 cups of flour. The recipe says 6 to 6.5 cups of flour, but so far we've done 3 cups. So you can kind of see it's coming together. You got to be strong, so it's a good arm workout. Okay, but this is definitely too gooey. There's no way I'm going to be able to knead that. It's going to be a hot mess. So I'm going to add another cup. So now we're up to, I think we're up to 4 now. I don't really watch. I don't really worry too much about it. I just wait till it looks like the right consistency. The first couple times you do it, you can worry about that if you want. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like biscuit dough. We had biscuits last night, so I kind of remember that. Okay, and it's okay to use metal now because you're not putting this back into your starter jar. Okay. Now I think it's still too gooey to be kneading this. So I'm gonna sprinkle on 1 more cup, sprinkle it. And then when I turn it out on my counter here, you can see that I'm gonna have to knead that into the stuff. So I'm gonna get that going here. I have a nice clean counter. I did that before I started. I sanitized it and washed it well because that's important when you're using your counter for actual food to sit on there that you're gonna eat. I sometimes get little drips and stuff from all my children, so I have to wash it carefully. Okay, so you can kind of see that there's like dry flour in here now, but I still haven't actually kneaded it. Once I knead it, I think this is gonna come together pretty well, and if not, it'll be fine that it's sitting on the little dry flours left over on the counter. That's not a big deal. But I do like to get 3 loaves out of this. I always like to try to give a friend a loaf, or I freeze a loaf, or I do both. So today I'm making a loaf for one of my special friends. I just had a baby, and we're social distancing, but I'm gonna drop it on her porch and see if she enjoys that. Okay, so this is really gooey, but what I'm doing is I'm folding it in on itself and it's picking up flour as I go. Okay, and I'm taking it and I'm kind of standing on my tiptoes, so I gotta have a good leverage of being able above the dough. Now it's really wet. It's slightly sticking, but it's not very gooey. Like if I would have done this any earlier, it would have been way gooey, really messy. So I'm just putting flour on top, pressing in, twisting, pressing in. So this is kind of what you do until it comes together into a dough. And you can see that's happening within seconds. Do you see how that looks more like a dough now? Let me hold it up for you. So that's what I do for that step. And there's still a little flour here, but it really doesn't feel, and I don't want it to be really, really, really coarse and stiff because I like a light sourdough. So this is all white flour. You can do different variations, but I think for your first dough, you should really do white so that you get a feel for the base. Okay, so this is the next step. You get a new bowl, not this crusty one. And what you do with the new bowl, and yes, I'd have to have a giant bowl because this is gonna rise. So with your new bowl, you're gonna lightly grease the bowl. I use spray, but you can use whatever you have. You stick your beautifully kneaded bread in there. And then I reuse my saran wrap from the overnight mix because it's just fine. It might have a little goo on it, but it's just fine. I cover this and then I let it set in a warm place several hours. So I'm going to tell you exactly what the recipe says. Place in a warm place until it doubles in bulk. Okay, it should double in bulk, so it should be this whole bowl should be full. So it says about 2 hours. Sometimes I turn on my gas fireplace and let it sit in front of my fireplace. Sometimes I put this in front of the sun. I live in Albuquerque and the summers are amazing for rising bread. So I just stick it outside in the sun. Today's really sunny, so I'll find a sunny spot over here and I'll place it in the sun for a couple hours, and I'll make another video to show you how to turn it into raisin bread. Have a good day.